Hello, everybody. We're broadcasting here from Berkeley, California. It is my immense pleasure today to introduce Xiao Qiang. Xiao is a research scientist at the School of Information at the University of California at Berkeley, where he teaches on digital activism and runs the Counterpower Lab. He is also the founder and editor-in-chief of China Digital Times, a digital news website that was started back in 2003 as a blog to facilitate the dissemination of news about the Chinese internet. A theoretical physicist by training, Xiao became a full-time human rights activist after the Tiananmen massacre in 1989. From 1991 to 2002, he was the executive director of the New York-based NGO Human Rights in China. In 2001, he was awarded a MacArthur Fellowship for this work. Xiao is an essential voice to understand how people's lives are being transformed at the nexus of political power and technology in the People's Republic of China. He has been a vocal critic of the Great Firewall of censorship and the rapidly advancing expansion of AI-empowered state surveillance and propaganda in his native country. His perspective is urgent and timely, all the more now in times of pandemic and with the situation in Hong Kong on the brink. I am grateful to President Nitsan Chore for organizing this wonderful session and to Xiao for accepting to deliver his lecture on rising digital authoritarianism in China and its impact on the world. Before we begin, however, I want to give you a few instructions for the Q&A. So you will see at the bottom of your screen a Q&A icon. You click on it, and a window will appear with a message box located in the in that window. It will say type your question here. Type your question and press enter or click send. You can also check the send anonymously box at the bottom of the Q&A window. I will read your questions. Anyone can vote for questions. To vote for questions, you will click on the symbol on the left and that will upvote your questions. So the order of the questions will change as a result of this public vote. For technical questions, you need to use the chat. So there's a chat and a Q&A. The Q&A are for questions. The chat is only for technical questions. And without further ado, Xiao, up to you.
Thank you, Marion. And thanks for the organizer to give me this opportunity. The title I've been given is talking about the surveillance state, and which is I call digital authoritarianism in China and its impact on the world. But I would like to start from some of my personal journey that from a PhD in astrophysics, grew up in China in the 80s and came to the United States in the late 80s, became a human rights activist at Tiananmen 1989. What I want to really talk about is when internet came to China and came to the world and then soon spread in China, it brought people the new hope. The hope that this time China people will have a new communication tool and infrastructure to expand their freedom. And the no authoritarian regime or dictatorship can survive really long under such technology. Actually, the first email that China sent to a German research institute expressed that new hope at that era. That email actually said, across the Great Wall, we can reach every corner of the world. Both in English, it's written in English because English, the email at the time only got written in English. But unfortunately, that Chinese internet has been never a real fully free internet. The Great Firewall, now we call, is a metaphor, but it's also a technology infrastructure that filtering and monitoring the Chinese internet users' access to the general internet, but also became a barrier that to protect the Chinese domestic internet industry. But from where I stand, that I started at UC Berkeley at the beginning of school of journalism, looking at a domestic censorship in China, online political information, soon focused my research on the Great Firewall. With my academic colleagues, I'll just share with you some images. We call it the Great Firewall, but actually it's this building in Beijing. Actually, there's a number of headquarters, not headquarters, but other buildings in Shanghai, Guangzhou, and there's the gateway, national gateway of the internet. This unit called National Computer Network Emergency Response Technical Team. You can look at their website. It didn't say, it says for computer security, it never says it's actually executing the called protecting regimes content security. That's the Chinese word into it. It is the largest, the most sophisticated internet censorship system. It's initiated from 2000, operated under the Ministry of Industry and Information Technology of China, and it's constantly involved. My own work look into the circumvention tools and technology, how the Great Firewall works, but this is not my topic today. But Great Firewall is also a great metaphor and symbol of what sometimes I call the Berlin Wall of our time. It separated China from the rest of the world by significant technology measures. But the new hope, remember the digital promises? Remember that now we, the activists, have a media, no more just the TV or the monopoly of large mainstream media. So the voiceless people can have a voice. Remember that all the information wants to be free, and the coordination of the collective actions became possible under information technology. So there is maybe a Jasmine revolution. That kind of optimism, I shared it with it, and I was working towards that, expanding that kind of freedom through the technology. That also by US President Clinton, right? He famously said, when he tried to include China into the World Trade Organization, arguing the liberty, the liberalization effect, when asked for China's internet censorship, President Clinton famously said, "Oh, good luck. That's like a nail of jello to the wall." But first, almost a decade or 15 years of the internet expanding China, it is true that while the censorship is there, the authorities trying to do everything to contain the online voices, but in general, the social critics' voices are expanding, and Chinese society are enjoying more and more freedom together come with their economic development. So we had this assumption that China's middle class will turn in China into democracy, just like South Korea, just like Taiwan. That assumption is actually wrong. This 2009 article in Wall Street Journal is actually sharing that optimism, saying China is losing a war over internet. I was actually being quoted supporting this thing. That was 10 years ago. But the fact is, China has becoming more and more authoritarian. It's a party state. It's a particular kind of party state. The party control the state and state control the country. And these party leaders have taken advantage of this globalized trading process. expanded the China's economy under the parties-led the state enterprises, but refusing to allow any political freedom. So that assumption didn't work as what we, at least as a time framework of the last 2 decades. What we see is the episode of the Empire Strike Back to repress the rising online voices and greater freedom in the nascent civil society movement in Chinese society. Since assuming power in 2012, the President Xi Jinping has launched far-ranging measures to enforce the censorship and to grab firmly the ideological and information control, both on the media and on the internet. This little graph is actually from a Google transparency report. It is a search traffic of the Chinese simplified word, which is roughly approximately to the amount of traffic that the people in China, Chinese users using VPN or other circumventions to get out of Great Firewall and then search for the content they look for. Because the traffic outside of Great Firewall, the Chinese population who using simplified characters to search are, you can, by assumption, is a constant. So the relative growth and a decrease and an increase are all from the traffic inside of China and their ability to circumvent Great Firewall. In other words, I call this the shadow of Great Firewall. This is how effective the Great Firewall is. So you can see from 2011, at the time, Google still not completely blocked in China. There's still a lot of traffic. But since Xi Jinping stepped in 2012, late 2012, 2013, after a short period of time, that then Google is being completely blocked from China. And since then, the Great Firewall becoming more and more severe. And until now, it's almost in this relative curve, there's no significant increase compared with before. But China is a large country. Even that almost look at zero at the bottom. It's still about 1 million or more internet users are doing that from China to the outside of the world. And that's partially my work today involved. But this is not what I'm really trying to say today. What I want to say is the Great Firewall also played a role that to fence the technology companies from outside of China, from Google to Facebook, from to that, and made the Chinese domestic technology giants become possible. And Chinese internet users, because China become the world's largest internet nations, and the state, under the state guidance, there's a massive amount of investment to develop technology. And that there's a few numbers, but the numbers are not important, but just look at the general trend. This is the mobile internet users in China. This is the number of active social media, Facebook on the top, YouTube, but later on, right after that is WhatsApp, and the WeChat. And today, actually TikTok, this is not an updated chart. The point is that the Chinese party, let's say, the ICT sector or the IT sector, are really homegrown, that with some giant Tencent, Baidu, Alibaba, not even mentioning the case of like Huawei, 5G, which I will talk about it. The technology growth leads us to the next question, which we always assume, I do, since I'm a political exile and I had high hope for the country's potential to become a democratic transition, and I highly hoped this new technology will make China free. So the internet will make China free is a major assumption that many of us observing China, studying China, or engaging with China-related activities. But Chinese government has the using the digital technology as a powerful tool to control society. That came to my today's real essential topic, which is the digital authoritarianism. The information and resource asymmetry make the companies or the state over the ordinary citizens, make it possible that to make those data and their subject to be controlled and manipulated. So that assumption that internet will make China free is not quite there now, at least from where we're standing here. The new technology actually helping Chinese government to control the society much more effectively. And there's control, there are two things. One is the legitimacy based on not only the economic growth, but also effective governance. And the control includes both the information, propaganda, ideological, narrative control, and the repressive measures, the physical repression. Technology helped all of them above, helped the economic growth, helped the effective governance. Look at China's latest response to the controlling the coronavirus, and helped to, on the information, ideological side, spread the Chinese Communist Party's view. Censorship is effective, and effectively mobilize state repressive machines like police and military. So the third episode of the Star War, unfortunately, is not Return of Jedi. It's this. Big data enables a prediction, and the AI would be able to utilize the big data that state can have access to is no comparison with any other society with some basic rule of law, privacy protection. But in China, those doesn't exist. So actually, I'm going to start on a list of the things that we observe or I have been following through the website called China Digital Times to show what this digitalization of Chinese society is turning China into a surveillance state. First of all, the general idea is this new generation technology, including AI and big data, is empowering the state, not so much empowering the ordinary users, but empowering the state to monitor, control, and manipulate China's vast population in a scalable fashion with ease and with capacity to micro-target individuals. This is new, but it's well on its way. One of the applied technologies that's already widely used is called a big data online public opinion surveillance and control system. There's a number of Chinese companies producing such software, and that system installed in many different levels of Chinese state control servers and the using by the different state bureaucratic agencies. It is actually effectively contributed to the control of the online public opinion. Now, a political sensitive information, a critique voice to the Chinese government policy, having a much more difficult time to become viral, thanks to such big data online public opinion surveillance and control system. Social credit system being talked a lot and been written quite a bit in the last 2-3 years on Western media. But the general, even it has not been completely implemented across country like as planned that to 2020, which is this year. but there are over 40 pilot projects in a different part of China is still pushing forward. And this is truly the big brother meets big data. The social credit system, different than, so we are familiar with financial credit system in for example, in the United States and other societies, is they integrate into much more personal data in a broader range, including their social behaviors, including their, not only their just personal conduct. And the Chinese government has ability to integrate the different data from commercial use, the data from the private companies to the different government agencies registered data much more effectively than any other society can possibly have. So the potential is still turning China into a truly surveillance society. And that, what I called a panopticon power, or panopticonian power, is more than just surveillance, because it's still the fear in people. The people self-behaving themselves. When you know everywhere you're being watched, every move is being recorded, or potentially could be recorded, your entire behavior changes. That's some fundamental, it's not in the rational level. It's not a trade-off of you're being punished this, but I get that, or this freedom, I trade off that. It's on a basic level, the fear frozen you, the core of you, the creative energy of you. And that channeled people's behavior into some permittable, encouraged activities. Government can guide it. Even they can give a grading system. Even they can digitally nudge people's personal behavior towards a pattern that the controller, which in this time is Chinese state, that to prefer. So it's more than just panopticon, but it's a what Professor Zupov called an instrumentarian power, which can guide people's behavior, not only predict. This technological process is still there. And the kind of effect of this overall surveillance go beyond of just the social credit system. One of the things you go to China, it's widely spread, is the surveillance cameras. Right? This one project starting from 2005 called Skynet surveillance program. Its goal is scan the population in seconds with 99.8 accuracy and stability maintenance. That's from the state document. Round block coverage of major districts, streets, schools, business centers, and timed surveillance over minor streets. Now, the Sharp Eye surveillance program, starting from 10 years later, is an additional project. Now, this time, not only cities, but countries, all the villages. They expanding it into the rural area. But all this facial technology, meaning the surveillance cameras, recording so many footages, and also now adding into the facial recognition capacity, how much the computing power we can have to handle those images. So in this Sharp Eye surveillance program, the Chinese authority introduced another ancient but a very effective surveillance tool. I call it coveillance, meaning the people monitoring themselves. They monitoring each other. Those technology, those surveillance cameras in each village are being monitored by the villagers themselves, and they see each other who are doing what at a corner of the street or at the public space in the square. And yes, it destroys people's trust, but that's the point. the study shows the Chinese people doesn't want to express their real political view among their friends, not just in public places, among their friends, among their families. They rather express their political view, actually, if they could, to strangers. So it's not like we cannot, when those surveillance technologies all over the places, it changed people's complete behavior in many different ways. Across China, the network of 176 million already cameras that's already 4 years ago. And the goal at the time was to reach into 626 million installed this year. I haven't seen the real data, recent data yet, but to marry with the facial recognition technology, this is where the China's artificial intelligence really leading the world. Facial recognition, voice recognition, and pattern recognition, these are the things being used for digital security, surveillance, and that's where the Chinese technology is even leading more than Silicon Valley and anywhere else in the world. If I have time, I would show you this Chinese 5G commercial, which has already been taken off the Chinese internet because it generated sort of a fear and backlash from the world. But it shows that with this 5G bandwidth, how much the Chinese police can do to catch a Chinese citizen. But before that, what we look into is also this called Police Cloud Predictive Policing Program, starting from 2015. The Provincial Police Cloud Computing Center has now a national database. The data gathered from vastly diverse resources, both public and purchased from the private sector. This system is used to track individuals, especially activists, dissidents, ethnic minorities, and other criminals, to visualize otherwise unseen correlations. We have seen the system database, which just unfortunately leaked on the internet, has the official data, or there are lessons plays, or there are other biometrics that in the large scale, city-wise, hundreds of thousands, and in some cases with millions, right? Including personal information titled government IDs, CCTV footage, medical history, IP address and usernames, supermarket memberships, hotel stays, record of petitioning the government, religious affiliation, and so on and so on. This is sort of a screenshot of one of those police database. It mostly demonstrated and reported in Xinjiang to monitoring Muslim, but it's actually now expanding to the other part of the China. But the Xinjiang case is the most well known, so I'm not going to even go into much details. But here's the satellite to show the concentration camps. And here is the facial recognition being used as an integrated joint operation platform, which is a Xinjiang police platform. And here is the Xinjiang police who were looking at the phone, and they would punch an ID number in, and they will see everything about this person. In this called IGOP database Xinjiang police use, it have Wi-Fi sniffers, which if you carry a cell phone into a room, a space that has Wi-Fi sniffers, even you don't talk to anyone, it's already can identify your cell phone's unique number, therefore to know that you have been that places. So in Xinjiang, there are security checkpoints, there's the data doors, not even mentioning these people's bank records, foreign travel history, data from house visiting by police and officials, all being integrated together into a general database. And here is some sample data of how the video surveillance spending project, 2017, 2016, looked at the amount of the US dollars in the millions to spend in different Xinjiang county alone, okay, 686 million US dollars on this safe county in Yalkot County alone, etc. And another example is from a online computer security person that find the leaked database, which have 2.5 million record of people with personal the information like ID card numbers and their location trackers in 24 hours time, alive, real time, and which has this is like 6 million records, and lots of them are Xinjiang Muslims. These are, we can only see a sort of a little bit clue of what the surveillance state are like. And this cartoon, which I just recently saw on the Chinese internet, which is describing China as a semi-feudal and semi-internet society, which actually a play of the Mao Zedong once said, China, before the Communist Party took power, was a semi-colonial and semi-feudal society. But this bring to maybe if later I have time, I'll show the 5G commercial, but I'll skip that to go to our next sort of assumption that which we got to run, which is that Chinese Communist Party's goal is only stay in power, preserving itself, obsessively self-preservation. So the only concentration is within China itself. But actually, that's not completely true, because when China got the economic becoming a globally connected, so when China seeking for resources, seeking for the infrastructure and the technology, and it started expanding internationally, and wherever the party's interest to preserve itself within China, they also need an international influence to shape other countries' behaviors to their own preference. That's why we see that China has been eroding the democratic values of many other countries, and even sometimes aiming to change other countries' behavior into the preference of Chinese Communist Party. The exporting censorship, such as the international book affairs or Chinese state media, the presence all over the places, including United States, and the China's influential operation campaigns compared with Russia is actually much larger. Even the US report, a lot was concentrating on Russians' disinformation on the US campaign. You can see this chart, this picture, which is a diffusion of Chinese-Russian information controls. The blue is Russia, but China's technology and information control influences expanding to much more countries, many more countries. There's a journalist, Isaac Stonefish, said, Russian influence is a lot more like chaos for chaos sake, but Chinese influence is about shaping the way people think about China. Look at Hollywood. Think about in the last 20 years, how many Hollywood movies has a negative Chinese character? No, because Hollywood need a China market. They rewrite a script to do that. Look at the corporate compliances from the European companies to American companies, from Mercedes-Benz to Gap to airlines. They do what they feel they seem cannot afford to offend the Chinese consumers, which is actually under control of Chinese government. Academic freedom as well. and as the how many people studying China, traveling to China, has self-censored themselves on certain issues, what they can research, what they can write, or what they can say, not even mentioning what they to publish. But these are just example of what China is expanding its own influence across the world. Finally, I'm coming to my last point, that it is also wrong to say, now, the ideology in China is dead, the Mao time is over, Chinese people become much freer, therefore, China is not an ideological country. Actually, it is. Especially since Xi Jinping stepped in power. It's a nature of the party state. It's a nature of that dictatorship. The party need a story, a reason to exist. So it has to set up itself a goal, a narrative, an ideology. This time, it's called Chinese Dream. It's called rejuvenization of Chinese civilization. Underneath, what is the Chinese Dream? If you describe it, it's becoming your personal pursuing of happiness being integrated into a national greatness. It is that the personal development, the personal growth, the personal individual's happiness are now being not only conditioned, but be part, integral part of a great nation, the state, the greatness of the state, the mission of the state. And that is the China Dream. And you can read from Xi Jinping's any book, any speech from the official propaganda. Does it really sound strange? Isn't that fascism from Europe, from Italy, from Nazi Germany, or from the fascist Japan? That the state greatness, the mission, is integrating the individual's life, even their spiritual lives, into a one. But that is China's ideology today. And look at the conflict between the US and China, the trade war, and now the sanctions against each other. Those are few sort of helped such Chinese dream, Chinese nationalism. Nationalism is one thing, but becoming such ideological driven, state-centered, and massive of the people being bought by their personal insecurity, by living under the surveillance and propaganda, by they don't have a full freedom to access the many other aspects of the life, but also being governized in this new international setting that becoming extremely worrisome. Let me have my last point, which is Chinese surveillance exporting to the world. We have documented in Malaysia, Pakistan, Zimbabwe, Ecuador, Bolivia, Venezuela, many places all over the world. This is just some sample of it. And the Australia Strategic Policy Institute has a much better map to show 75 smart cities and public security solutions projects, 52 5G initiatives across 34 countries, 119 this research and development labs, et cetera, 305 telecommunication ICT projects. That many of them goes with One Belt and One Road. So before I stop, I show you a Chinese internet user's self-made TV, 1 minute show, to describe how he felt living in China, such a technology surveillance enabled surveillance state, and the semi-feudal, which is a federal, which we call the Qing dynasty. This video being quickly censored in Chinese internet, but you can see it here. So I'll stop to take questions. But I want to use one more quote from Giles Deleuze. There's no need to fear or hope. Just look for new weapons. Thank you.
Okay, so this is Marion, and thank you so much for this wonderful talk and terrifying vision. So we will begin with questions. I see one question right now on the queue. Please, if you have questions, please type them in the Q&A. So I'll read the first question. You suggested that China's middle class didn't work to turn China into a democratic country. Could you explain the reasons for this? Why does the Chinese public seem to be more tolerant with this? Thank you.
Well, this assumption came from many people studied, observed, happen in other countries, right? Including Latin America, particularly in Asia. That examples such as South Korea, Singapore. Not Singapore. Sorry, Taiwan. Yeah. China does the last 40 years economic growth produced a large, quite a large number. I don't have data with me. The middle class or the income, which is distinctly different from the rest of the country, which is 600 million of the low income population. They're urban, well educated, relatively speaking, and in those major cities, particularly the first-tier cities like Beijing, Shanghai, Shenzhen, Guangzhou, their life standard has been quite high, even compared with their neighbors, the Japan or Taiwan or even Hong Kong, etc. But this it's not completely wrong to say with people's growing material conditions that improved, they demand more. For example, when people has their house, their apartment in the city, they start to form those committees to managing their housing situation, bargaining with the owners, etc. The managers, they becoming more organized in a self-organized way. Internet too. I have seen many those sort of increasing bolder voices for a more plural society. But what this assumption missed is the other half of the equation, which is the economical growth, including the technological capacity, greatly enhanced the party state ability to control the society and to shape people's behavior. The Chinese state become much more wealthier and put a lot of resource into controlling the society. The Chinese middle class, which even they show the early sign of the demanding greater political freedom, they have no way to organize themselves into a greater unity. The collective action, the best thing you can see is those online public opinion storms, which is often have millions of people involved that express their voices. But with the censorship getting better and better and the surveillance, even those online public opinion expressions that are collective voices are becoming less and less and more difficult. A good example will be Dr. Li Wenliang, who is a whistleblower during the COVID-19 in early January this year. And he was being taken to the police because he learned from his medical co-workers that there is a SARS-like coronavirus is spreading. And he shared with his actually personal friends and the college mates in the chat group. But that immediately being reported and identified as a spreading dangerous rumor, and he was being disciplined by the police. He is middle class. If you look at his Weibo, the social media account, he shares his habits. He likes certain movies. He likes certain shows. He shares like certain great food. He's just like a typical Chinese urban, ordinary middle class person. But he's also have a good conscience that when he was, even he was actually, unfortunately, being contained by the coronavirus, he was taking the interview from at that moment was the Chinese press had a moment of freedom that to reporting this pandemic during late January, that Dr. Li Wenliang spoken out that to express himself to say a healthy society should not only have one voice. That's a typical Chinese middle class's genuine political statement. Really good. And then he died. And his death touched upon so many Chinese people. That night, millions of Chinese people get online to mourn him, to support his messages. And it became an online hashtag called "We Want Free Speech." That story is telling us that genuine desire of the greater freedom in Chinese society is there. But look at how effectively the state crashed that voices. That hashtag will be gone, millions of posts will be gone. And in next week, the week after next week, hundreds of people like Dr. Li Wenliang continue to be arrested, continue to be crashed. And the Chinese state continue to control the information, manipulating the information, and put propaganda in front of people, and censor the internet. This millions and millions of people share exactly the sentiment of Dr. Li Wenliang, a middle class, and his message and his genuine sort of voice have no match with the state's determination and their capacity of control, censorship, and surveillance. So that is what the dilemma we're facing today. It's not that Chinese people do not want greater freedom, but the capacity for them to becoming a collective action to change the values and institutions in the society is now being more and more diminished by the new technology rather than empowered.
Thank you. So the next question is actually about the 5G movie that you wanted to show us. I don't know if we have time. I don't know how long it is, but if
it's just 1 minute.
It's just 1 minute. Okay, so we'll take that 1 minute and then we'll move on to the next question.
Okay, yeah, this is Huawei's 5G commercial just to show what 5G can do. It's quite telling. So, okay, here. the Chinese police. G security glass. This is showing the technology of can tell a person from the how you walk. Not just the face.
这就是神奇的5G。作为第5代移动通信网络，5G 的峰值理论传输速度可达每秒数十 GB， 大带宽、低时延、大连接的特性，整合城市运行核心系统的各项关键信息，形成万物互联。这就是 5G 时代下智慧城市的构建。5G。链接新时代。
It's called the smart city, the smart the security under the 5G bandwidth.
Yeah, so it's showing the integration of all of these systems.
Right.
So the next question. China has developed a new internet protocol that allows for centralized control. Could you tell us more about the difference between internet protocol in China and elsewhere?
I'm not sure about this question. The internet protocol in China is same as anywhere else. The bottom technology is the same. It was when we talk about the Great Firewall, it really means that at the national gateway level, there is a layer of both surveillance and filtering happening by sort of added technology. But the technology itself, those protocols are the same being used for what we call the detection of the intrusion system. But in other places, in computer networks, it's being used to detect the attack, which is usually a virus, malinformation, software that then react to either intercept or taking action to it. But in China, that harmful information or attack also being defined to content. So the same technology underneath is the same. China doesn't have a different protocol in terms of communication on all this internet. But the new generation of technology, yes, like 5G, yes. That is sort of more invented by those Chinese companies. Therefore, they have their own protocol for their equipment, for their hardwares. One of the China's digital expansion is China is trying to, and to some degrees it's already in success, that to make those Chinese protocols for the Chinese companies becoming the international world standard, since Chinese companies now dominating the market. So yeah. So again, in the latest technology in certain sectors, China is leading this sort of protocol standard setting.
Okay. Thank you. We have a series of questions about sort of the exports of the technology. So one question is specifically saying, is there geopolitical and economic logic to who China is selling their surveillance technology? And then there's a sort of subsidiary question about the role of TikTok and in what way TikTok might actually feed the sort of a logic of international surveillance.
Yeah, let me sort of very briefly on this. Technology exportation on the surface is a trait behavior, right? Wherever there's a market, wherever there's a need, and where's the expansion of the technology. As I said, the Chinese, the surveillance camera, the facial recognition, or even those called the smart city, these are digital Silk Road projects that are quite sort of on a lesser expensive and a better effective, more effective sort of standard. Many countries will take that kind of technology. Africa, Latin America, Southeast Asia, but much more. In Europe, Central Europe, not only just authoritarian countries, regimes taking those technologies, democratic countries too. Many of the democracies or somewhat democratic functioning societies taking into those technologies. They often goes within Chinese state sort of sponsored programs. But yes, there is a geopolitical sort of aim behind it. Those large Chinese companies never really just private companies. They always carrying the sort of national strategic state geopolitical sort of goals with them. So state will give them support. State will subsidize them. State will make them competitive in their pricing or in their giving them other policy support to the countries who place the Chinese state geopolitically seems is a target. So never being naive to assume Huawei is a private company or any of those large Chinese companies. There's no Chinese state behind it without another geopolitical consideration. TikTok, as an example, being disguised as a non-Chinese company for a long time. Yeah, people didn't know that's actually a Chinese, deeply connected to China. It's a Chinese company until it's already taking market in a large level. So many of those Chinese private companies or Chinese state-controlled private companies, in order to technology companies particularly, in order to taking the overseas markets, they often disguise themselves into a non-Chinese company actually by using proxies in other countries, not reveal their identity at least at the beginning. TikTok is a great example, but now it has a vast user basis across the globe.
Okay, well, unfortunately, it is exactly 1 p.m. So apologies to all of those who couldn't ask their own questions, but maybe you can email separately. And thank you so much, Xiao, for this enlightening talk. And we look forward to reading more and following more the very important work that you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Marion.
Goodbye.